The world, if you can imagine it, is itself a library. Not one made of stone or marble, not one housed in a single city, but a living library, vast, immeasurable, stretching across centuries, across civilizations, across the fragile fabric of memory itself. Its shelves are not seen, yet they exist, shelves of human thought, shelves of dreams, shelves of words whispered in secret and recorded on clay, on parchment, on paper, on screens of glass. Most of these shelves are open to us. We wander them freely, finding poetry, finding history, finding philosophy. We take from them the words of saints and rulers, of prophets and skeptics, of poets who sang the human heart. But there are shelves that are locked, sealed. Shelves that are not open to curious hands. Upon them rest the forbidden books of history. Why are they forbidden? The reasons shift like shadows on stone. Some books were condemned as dangerous because they carried heresy, ideas that dared to contradict sacred law. Others were silenced because they revealed too much, knowledge of lands, sciences, or rituals not meant for ordinary eyes. Some were banned not because of what they said, but because of the power they carried, power that frightened kings, priests, conquerors, inquisitors alike. To think of forbidden books is to think of silence. The silence of fire, the silence of ash, the silence of manuscripts buried deep in earth, sealed in jars of clay, waiting centuries to be found. It is also to think of whispers. Because no book, once written, is truly gone. Even if burned, even if banned, even if declared dead by decree, the idea remains. It drifts, it hums, it lingers, like a ghost that refuses to depart. Tonight, we enter that library together. Slowly. Patiently. As though walking by lantern light through the ruins of a monastery at midnight. Let us let the silence gather. Let us feel the dust of centuries brush against our fingertips. Let us listen for the hum beneath the silence, the voices waiting still to be heard. We begin at the edge of the sea, in the ancient city of Alexandria. Imagine the harbor, ships from Greece, from Egypt, from Babylon, from India. Tall sails furled, prows heavy with cargo, spices, ivory, glass, papyrus. The air thick with salt and incense. And towering above it all, the lighthouse of Pharos, one of the wonders of the ancient world, its fire guiding sailors from leagues away. But the true wonder of Alexandria was not its lighthouse, nor its bustling trade, but its library. A temple to knowledge. A treasury of the human mind. Some say 500,000 scrolls rested there. Imagine it, rows upon rows of papyrus rolls, each bound with string, tagged with inscriptions. Shelves upon shelves climbing high into vaulted ceilings. In its chambers lay the wisdom of countless civilizations, Egyptian hymns written in hieroglyphs, Babylonian star charts inscribed in cuneiform, Greek tragedies and comedies, the philosophies of Plato and Aristotle, Indian sutras, perhaps even records from lands beyond the Atlantic. Every ship that entered Alexandria's harbor was searched. If books were found, they were seized, copied, and stored. Knowledge was collected not for the few, but for empire. The library was more than a building, it was a vision, that all human thought could live together, side by side, without boundaries of culture or creed. But visions are fragile. And Alexandria burned. The flames came more than once. When Julius Caesar laid siege to the city, fire spread to the docks and into the library. Later, when Christianity rose, zealots saw pagan knowledge as corruption and fed scrolls into fire. Centuries later, under Islamic conquest, other accounts describe destruction once again. Historians argue. Was it one fire? Many fires? Or a slow erosion, a neglect that let parchment rot? No one truly knows. But this much is certain, the scrolls are gone. Imagine it, hundreds of thousands of voices, vanished. The plays of Sophocles we will never see. The books of ancient historians who witnessed empires rise and fall. Treatises on medicine, on astronomy, on machines, ideas that might have leapt humanity forward by centuries. All reduced to smoke and ash. But can knowledge ever truly die? Some say fragments of the library survived, scattered in secret collections, disguised, carried eastward, hidden in monasteries. Some even whisper that travelers carried copies to faraway lands, that the spirit of Alexandria still lives, hidden in shadows, waiting to surface again. Close your eyes and picture it, scrolls aflame, smoke curling into the dark sky, rising like the ghosts of forgotten civilizations. The hum of silence after the fire fades. And beneath that silence, the question that has haunted humanity for centuries: what knowledge did we lose in the ashes of Alexandria? When the Roman Empire turned its gaze toward faith, the world changed forever. Christianity, once a forbidden sect itself, spread across continents, binding together the hearts and minds of millions. But with growth came power. And with power came control. In the earliest centuries of the faith, there were not 4 gospels, but many. In small gatherings, in hidden chambers, in desert caves, Christians read not only the words of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but also the Gospel of Thomas, filled with cryptic sayings. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, which dared to give a woman a voice of authority. The Gospel of Judas, painting betrayal as part of a divine mystery. The Gospel of Peter, with visions strange and unsettling. They told the story differently. Some whispered that salvation came not only through the church, but through knowledge, secret knowledge, gnosis, discovered in the depths of the soul. Others spoke of Christ as a luminous presence, a revealer of mysteries, not simply the figure of orthodox creed. But such words were dangerous. Dangerous to the hierarchy that was forming. dangerous to the structure of authority. And so, councils were called. Bishops gathered. Decrees were made. 4 gospels were chosen. The others condemned as heresy. The sacred was separated from the forbidden. The forbidden gospels were hunted. Scrolls were burned. Communities silenced. Words lost. Yet, some fragments remained. In Egypt, monks buried leather-bound codices deep in the sand, sealed in clay jars, perhaps knowing that someday, in another age, the words might be needed again. Centuries passed. The gospels of authority grew strong. The others lay silent. Until, one afternoon in 1945, a farmer digging for fertilizer near Nag Hammadi unearthed a sealed jar. Inside were 13 leather codices, brittle with age, filled with 49 ancient texts, gospels thought lost forever. For the first time in over 1,000 years, the forbidden voices spoke again. Imagine holding one of those manuscripts. The ink faded, the papyrus frayed, the words still alive. They whisper not of obedience, but of inner awakening. Not of rigid authority, but of direct experience of the divine. One line from Thomas reads, "The kingdom of God is within you and it is outside you." The Church once declared such words dangerous. And perhaps they were. For to say that heaven lies within each of us is to remove the chains of authority. To say that the kingdom is found in the soul is to make every human being a temple. What was it like, to be one of those early readers? To gather in a quiet room, a single lamp burning, to pass around a fragile parchment, to read words forbidden by empire? To know that every syllable carried risk, and yet also carried light? These gospels vanished, and yet, they did not. They slept. They dreamed beneath the sands. And when they returned, they unsettled us once again. They remind us that history is never fixed, never final, but always a story shaped by power and silence. After the fall of Rome, the world entered the long shadow of the Middle Ages. In stone monasteries, monks preserved sacred texts, copying scripture by the dim light of candles. But outside those cloisters, in villages, in marketplaces, in whispers carried down winding roads, another kind of knowledge lingered. The knowledge of magic. These were books not sanctioned by any church or king. They were grimoires, handwritten collections of spells, invocations, charms, and diagrams. Some were little more than folk remedies, how to heal wounds with herbs, how to calm storms, how to protect cattle from disease. But others promised power. The power to summon angels and demons. The power to bind spirits. The power to command the invisible forces of the cosmos. The Key of Solomon. The Picatrix. The Book of Abramelin. The Grand Grimoire. They were whispered to exist, sometimes appearing in fragments, sometimes disguised within innocent-looking manuscripts. Each carried symbols and sigils, instructions for rituals, diagrams of circles and pentagrams to protect the summoner. To the Church, they were dangerous. For if one could command angels and demons directly, what need was there for priests? If one could heal or curse with hidden words, what need was there for the intercession of the holy? And so, grimoires were banned, burned, condemned. But burning knowledge rarely kills it. Like sparks from a fire, copies spread. A grimoire destroyed in Paris might reappear in Prague. One banned in Florence might be whispered about in Spain. Scholars in secret societies collected them, coded them, preserved them under lock and key. Imagine a candlelit chamber. A heavy book lies open on a wooden table, its pages scrawled with ink, its margins filled with symbols. A hooded figure traces lines in chalk upon the floor, forming circles and names of angels. The air thickens. The silence deepens. In such a moment, the forbidden words are not mere text, but living instruments. Whether true or imagined, they alter reality for the one who believes. Were the grimoires superstition? Or were they fragments of an older science, a science too strange for the sanctioned world? We may never know. But even now, libraries hold them in secret collections. Even now, some remain hidden on shelves not open to the public, resting beneath dust, their leather cracked, their words waiting for another hand to turn the page. And the hum of their silence is not gone. If you listen closely, even now, you may hear it, the faint turning of a page, somewhere deep in history, in a book that was never meant to be read. The Middle Ages slowly gave way to a new dawn. The Renaissance. A time of rebirth, of rediscovery, of light flickering through the cracks of long darkness. Cathedrals rose, art blossomed, and the old manuscripts of Greece and Rome were sought again, translated into the tongues of Europe. Yet, alongside philosophy, alongside music and mathematics, there was another pursuit that thrived in the shadows. Alchemy. Not simply the dream of turning lead into gold, though that dream shimmered in every furnace and cauldron. Alchemy was something greater, something stranger. It was the belief that the universe itself was a living text, written in symbols, waiting to be read. That metals grew in the earth like plants, striving toward perfection. That the human soul mirrored the cosmos. And that, by understanding the hidden processes of matter, one could understand the hidden processes of the spirit. To the alchemist, the crucible was not only for metals. It was for the heart. To transmute lead into gold was also to transmute the heavy matter of the human soul into something radiant, eternal, divine. But alchemy was forbidden science. For while it whispered of spiritual truths, it also hinted at powers that challenged both church and crown. To create gold was to rival kings. To harness forces of nature was to trespass upon the divine. And so, alchemical manuscripts were hunted, censored, sometimes destroyed. And yet, they endured. Picture a small workshop in Prague. The shelves are filled with glass vessels, powders of strange colors, instruments of brass and iron. A furnace glows red in the corner. On the table lies a manuscript bound in leather, its pages filled with diagrams of circles, suns, and moons, cryptic symbols, and recipes for transformation. The air is heavy with the scent of sulfur and mercury. The alchemist works alone, in silence, scribbling notes by candlelight, knowing that discovery could bring not honor, but accusation. Among the forbidden texts were treatises like the Emerald Tablet, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. Its words are simple, yet endlessly enigmatic, as above, so below. As within, so without. A line that has echoed through centuries, suggesting that the microcosm of the human soul reflects the macrocosm of the universe. There were the works of Paracelsus, who spoke of hidden properties in plants and minerals, who dared to suggest that illness came not from sin, but from natural causes, and that nature itself provided cures. His writings were denounced, yet they spread, inspiring physicians and philosophers alike. And there were stranger texts still, whose authorship was unknown, whose diagrams seemed almost alien. The Voynich manuscript, filled with drawings of plants that do not exist, stars and constellations that cannot be placed, and women bathing in pools connected by impossible machinery. Written in an undeciphered script, it has resisted scholars for centuries. Some call it a hoax. Others, a code. Others still, a survival of forbidden science too advanced for its time. But whether real or imagined, hoax or truth, such manuscripts carried an aura of danger. For knowledge that cannot be explained always unsettles. It loosens the boundaries of certainty. It reminds us that reality may hold more than we can see. And what of those who truly sought the philosopher's stone, the great secret of alchemy, said to grant not only the transmutation of metals, but eternal life? Legends tell of Nicolas Flamel, a French scribe who supposedly unlocked its mysteries. After his death, rumors swirled that his tomb was empty, that he lived still, wandering the earth. His books, they say, contained the secret, but if so, they were hidden well, perhaps destroyed, perhaps still resting in the shadows of an old library, waiting. Forbidden science was not only alchemy. It was also astronomy. For when Galileo lifted his telescope and saw the moons of Jupiter, he saw something dangerous, proof that not everything revolved around the earth. His writings were banned. His voice silenced. Yet, like alchemists before him, his words survived, whispering through time, reminding us that truth cannot be contained forever. And so, alchemy and the forbidden sciences occupy a strange place in our history. Half wisdom, half myth. Half experiment, half dream. They were banned, condemned, hidden away. And yet, they carried the seeds of modern science, wrapped in symbols and secrecy. Chemistry, medicine, astronomy, all have roots in what was once forbidden. But imagine, for a moment, what was lost. The manuscripts burned in inquisitorial flames. The experiments destroyed. The discoveries silenced. How different might our world be, had forbidden science not been smothered by fear? Could flight, electricity, medicine, have come centuries earlier? Or would the opening of such doors too soon have destroyed us? Close your eyes. Hear the bubbling of vessels, the hiss of flame, the scratch of quill on parchment. Somewhere, an alchemist leans closer to the crucible, waiting for lead to glow with the first glimmer of gold. Somewhere, a forbidden book lies open, its diagrams alive with meaning only the initiated can see. Somewhere, in the silence of a forgotten library, the hum of the forbidden sciences still lingers, still waiting for someone willing to listen. The Renaissance was not only a rebirth of art, but a rebirth of curiosity. The world seemed to stir from a long sleep. Sculptors carved marble into living flesh. Painters opened windows into eternity with color and perspective. Explorers set sail into uncharted seas. And yet, beneath the brightness of discovery, another current flowed. Quieter. Stranger. A current of knowledge that was never meant to be brought fully into the light. Alchemy. To the common imagination, alchemy is the crude attempt to turn lead into gold. But to the alchemists themselves, the work was more profound. Metals were seen as living things, seeds planted deep in the earth, growing slowly toward perfection. Gold was not simply a metal, it was the completion of nature, the flower at the end of a long cycle. To transmute lead into gold was not only to master matter, it was to accelerate nature, to unlock her hidden laws, to compress centuries of growth into a single act of fire. But the crucible of alchemy was not only material. It was also spiritual. The lead, the alchemists said, was a symbol of the soul weighed down by corruption, by ignorance, by heaviness. The gold was enlightenment, transformation, perfection. To create the philosopher's stone, the mysterious substance said to grant both transmutation and eternal life, was to refine the self, to turn one's inner darkness into light. Yet, such words could not be spoken too loudly. For kings feared the promise of endless wealth. Priests feared the suggestion of a path to immortality outside their doctrine. And so, alchemical manuscripts were often banned, their authors accused of sorcery, their writings hidden in cryptic symbols that only the initiated could understand. Some of these works survive still. There is the Emerald Tablet, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, a figure half mythical, half divine. Its words are brief, fewer than a page, yet within them lie mysteries that have haunted centuries. That which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below. To the alchemists, this was a map of reality, that the heavens and the human, the stars, and the soul, mirror one another. To know one is to know the other. There is the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, a manuscript that appeared in the 15th century. It claims to contain rituals by which one might summon angels, command spirits, and even converse with God. To possess it was dangerous. To practice it could mean accusation of heresy, or worse. Yet whispers of it passed hand to hand, copied in secret, its instructions cloaked in secrecy. There is the Picatrix, a text of astrology and talismanic magic, born in the Arab world and translated into Latin. It speaks of the power of planets, of symbols that can bend fate, of diagrams that bridge the human mind and the cosmic order. For centuries it was outlawed, hidden away, and yet its ideas crept silently into the works of philosophers and magicians of Europe. And then there are the manuscripts that remain mysteries even now. The Voynich manuscript, discovered in the early 20th century, its pages filled with drawings of plants that do not exist, astronomical charts, naked figures bathing in strange vessels, and a script no scholar has yet deciphered. Was it an alchemical cipher? A code of lost science? Or a hoax? Its silence endures. But alchemy was not only theory. It was lived. Men and women dedicated their lives to it. Consider Nicolas Flamel, a Parisian scribe of the 14th century. He began as a bookseller, but legend says he discovered an ancient manuscript filled with alchemical secrets. With its guidance, he achieved the great work, creating the philosopher's stone itself. Some claimed he and his wife lived for centuries afterward, appearing in distant lands, their fortune endless, their bodies untouched by time. His tomb, it is said, was found empty. Was it myth? Or was it a truth too dangerous to be admitted? Consider John Dee, advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, mathematician, cartographer, and astronomer, yet also alchemist and magician. In his chambers at Mortlake, he filled shelves with thousands of books, more than any man of his time. He spoke with angels, he said, through a medium named Edward Kelly. He believed he was unlocking the hidden architecture of the cosmos, dictated by heavenly beings in a strange language, Enochian. For his pursuits, he was both revered and feared, praised as a scholar yet whispered about as a sorcerer. His library was plundered. His manuscripts scattered. And still, his name lingers like a ghost across the border between science and magic. Consider Giordano Bruno, a wandering philosopher. He spoke not only of alchemy but of infinity, an infinite universe filled with countless worlds, each perhaps with their own suns and beings. For this, and for his refusal to yield to authority, he was declared heretic. In the year 1600, in Rome, he was burned alive. His books were cast into flames with him. And yet, his vision of infinity endured, finding voice again in later centuries. Alchemy was outlawed, ridiculed, condemned. Yet, in secret, it survived. Manuscripts were copied in hidden inks. Diagrams were disguised as innocent symbols. Philosophers cloaked their meaning in allegory, writing of kings and queens, of dragons and serpents, of sun and moon, when in truth they spoke of processes of the soul and of matter. To read an alchemical text is to read in layers: myth, science, poetry, secrecy. Only those with patience could glimpse the truth. And while the church hunted such texts, kings often sought them in secret. For power is always tempted by more power. In royal courts, alchemists were welcomed, their manuscripts protected, their work funded, though never openly. For while alchemy was forbidden in law, it was irresistible in temptation. Look again into the alchemist's workshop. The crucible glows, the furnace hisses, powders of strange colors glimmer in glass vessels. The alchemist bends close, quill-scratching symbols into a hidden book, ink thick with secrecy. Outside, the world suspects nothing. Inside, in the silence, an entire universe of forbidden science breathes. But what, we might ask, was truly lost? How many manuscripts were burned in fires of fear? How many discoveries silenced before they could take root? Could electricity, engines, medicine, have been born centuries earlier? Could humanity have leapt forward, had not fear pulled us back? Or perhaps the knowledge was too dangerous. Perhaps to open such doors too soon would have consumed us. The forbidden sciences are a double edge. To touch them is to risk both illumination and destruction. That is why they were banned. That is why their books were hidden. That is why, even now, the word alchemy is spoken with both fascination and unease. Yet, somewhere, in the silence of an old library, perhaps in the basement of a forgotten monastery, perhaps in the locked vault of a private collector, one of those books still waits. Its leather cover is cracked, its pages smell faintly of smoke. Symbols crawl across its parchment like stars across a midnight sky. And if one dares to open it, one might hear the hum of eternity, pressing close. Alchemy did not vanish with the Renaissance. It bled quietly into the age of reason, like an underground river that never dries, only flows deeper into the hidden earth. Even as philosophy grew more rational, even as science took its first modern steps, many of the brightest minds of history were still haunted by the alchemical dream. The dream of hidden laws, of the cosmos written in symbols, of nature as a book waiting to be deciphered. One such mind was Isaac Newton. To the world, Newton is the father of modern physics, the discoverer of gravity, the architect of calculus, the man who saw the order of the heavens in the fall of an apple. Yet, when his papers were studied centuries later, a strange truth emerged. Far more of Newton's writings were devoted to alchemy than to mathematics or physics. In secret, Newton filled notebooks with experiments on transmutation, recipes for strange substances, studies of mercury and sulfur, diagrams of furnaces. He read forbidden manuscripts. He copied passages from the Emerald Tablet. He searched not only for laws of motion but for the philosopher's stone. Publicly, he gave the world science. Privately, he pursued the forbidden. Why did he hide it? Perhaps he feared ridicule. Perhaps he feared the church, which still cast a shadow over forbidden knowledge. Or perhaps he knew that the line between science and sorcery was not as clear as history would later make it. For to seek truth is always to step into shadow. But Newton was not alone. Across Europe, whispers spoke of a hidden brotherhood, the Rosicrucians. They appeared suddenly in the 17th century, with mysterious pamphlets declaring the existence of a secret order of philosophers, guardians of hidden wisdom. They claimed to possess the keys to alchemy, medicine, and the deepest mysteries of nature. Their words promised transformation, not only of metals into gold, but of humanity into something greater. They spoke of a secret brotherhood traveling the world, unseen, working silently to guide the course of history. Were they real? Were they myth? No one could say. But their writings were banned, condemned, hunted. Princes and popes feared them. Scholars searched for them in vain. And yet, their shadow lingered, shaping secret societies that followed, Freemasons, mystics, occult philosophers who read their symbols and swore to keep their silence. The fear of forbidden science was not only about books. It became stories, legends, warnings. The most famous of these is the story of Faust. A scholar dissatisfied with the limits of knowledge, Faust turns to forbidden arts, summoning Mephistopheles, making a pact with the devil in exchange for limitless wisdom and power. His story spread across Europe, told in plays, poems, ballads. To seek too much knowledge, it warned, was to risk damnation. To open books not meant to be opened was to sign one's soul away. But perhaps Faust is more than a legend. Perhaps he is a mirror of every alchemist who stood before a furnace in the silence of night, wondering whether the words on the parchment were guiding them toward truth or toward ruin. And still, the manuscripts survived. Hidden in vaults, disguised in allegories, passed hand to hand in secret. In Prague, Emperor Rudolf II gathered alchemists and magicians into his court, filling his castle with strange laboratories, filling his library with forbidden works. His hunger for knowledge was so vast that his court became a magnet for the strange and the brilliant, from astronomers like Kepler to alchemists whose names are barely remembered. His reign became known as a golden age of hidden science. But after his death, his collections scattered, many vanishing into silence. What did those libraries hold? What manuscripts disappeared into the private vaults of noble families, never to surface again? How many are still hidden, their bindings cracked, their words unread for centuries? The fear of forbidden science has always been double-edged. For kings, alchemy was temptation, endless wealth, endless power. For the Church, it was heresy, salvation without grace, immortality without God. For the common people, it was danger, witches, sorcerers, dark dealings with the unseen. And yet, the seekers pressed on, guided by the belief that truth was hidden in symbols, waiting for the patient eye. Listen closely, and you may hear it, the rustle of a page, the hiss of boiling mercury, the faint hum of words whispered in secrecy. Perhaps you can almost smell it, the acrid smoke of the furnace, the faint sweetness of crushed herbs, the metallic tang of the unknown. Alchemy was not destroyed. It was absorbed. Out of its ashes came chemistry, medicine, astronomy. The forbidden slowly became the accepted. But even now, the shadow of alchemy lingers. The language of transmutation survives in metaphors. The dream of the philosopher's stone echoes in science's quest for mastery of matter. The belief in transformation, in turning lead into gold, death into life, ignorance into wisdom, still haunts us. And perhaps, somewhere, in a forgotten monastery or a sealed archive, a true manuscript remains. Bound in cracked leather, its diagrams intricate, its words cloaked in cipher. Waiting. Whispering. Still forbidden. Alchemy, though forbidden, did not wither. It adapted. It disguised itself. It found ways to live beneath the surface of accepted knowledge. And in doing so, it became the hidden root of much of modern science. The early chemists who founded laboratories, who measured, who experimented, they stood on alchemical ground. Robert Boyle, often called the father of chemistry, was himself an alchemist. In secret, he conducted experiments to transmute metals, keeping notebooks filled with alchemical recipes even as he publicly wrote of the mechanical philosophy. Antoine Lavoisier, who gave us the modern language of elements, was influenced by alchemical ideas of transformation, though he cloaked them in clarity and mathematics. It is a strange paradox. What was outlawed, ridiculed, and condemned became the foundation of our modern sciences. The crucible became the beaker. The furnace became the laboratory. The search for the philosopher's stone became the study of atoms. And yet, in the transition, something was lost. For alchemy was never only about matter. It was about meaning. The laboratory was also a temple. The experiment was also a meditation. The transformation of metals was also the transformation of the self. When science severed itself from alchemy, it gained precision, but it lost mystery. Yet mystery clings, even now. In dusty monasteries, manuscripts still lie hidden. During the Inquisition, many monks saved books from destruction, not because they believed in them, but because they feared destroying knowledge itself was a sin. These books, copied in careful hands, were locked away in vaults, sealed behind heavy wooden doors. Catalogues omitted them. They were whispered about only among the initiated. Some of these volumes, strange alchemical treatises, forbidden commentaries, diagrams that seemed more like prayers than formulas, have never been open to modern eyes. Occasionally, one surfaces. A forgotten codex is found in a private collection. A page is uncovered in an archive. And suddenly, the world is reminded that the past still holds secrets. But for every book rediscovered, how many still wait? How many lie silent, their ink fading, their diagrams still pulsing with meaning no one can read? And what of the alchemists who turned their eyes toward healing? For while some sought gold, others sought medicine. They believed metals had powers, that plants absorbed cosmic influences, that combinations of matter could cure sickness. The line between alchemy and pharmacy was thin. Take Paracelsus, the wandering physician of the 16th century. He scorned traditional doctors, burned medical texts in public, and proclaimed that true healing lay in understanding the hidden properties of nature. He brewed tinctures of metals, distilled potions, spoke of invisible forces. To his enemies, he was a heretic, a madman. To his followers, he was a prophet. Many of his ideas, though condemned in his time, became foundations of modern medicine. And so we see the double life of forbidden knowledge, condemned in one age, canonized in another. Yet, the fear never vanished. Because alchemy was never only practical. Its symbols ran deeper. Its diagrams seemed like doorways. Its metaphors suggested more than medicine, more than metallurgy. They suggested hidden worlds. Consider the alchemical image of the Ouroboros, the serpent devouring its own tail. A symbol of eternity, of cycles, of death and rebirth. To the alchemist, it was a diagram of transformation, both material and spiritual. To the church, it was too pagan, too alien. Such symbols were erased from official doctrine. Yet they lingered in secret, painted into margins, carved into hidden corners of architecture, whispered in societies that promised silence. Consider the alchemical marriage, the union of the sun and moon, the king and queen, the red and the white. On the surface, an allegory of metals fusing. Beneath, a symbol of the reconciliation of opposites, of wholeness, of the transformation of the self. To speak of such things openly was to risk suspicion of heresy. But in secret, it flourished. And so alchemy became not only forbidden science, but forbidden spirituality. It was the meeting place of matter and spirit, of laboratory and chapel. Some scholars argue that this is why alchemy was so feared. It was not only a threat to wealth or to dogma. It was a threat to the boundary between worlds. It whispered that the human being could be more, that the divine was not locked away in heaven, but written into nature, accessible through symbols, experiments, and transformation. To those who held power, such an idea was intolerable. But imagine, now, the alchemist's workshop at midnight. The furnace glows. Strange powders rest in jars. Symbols cover the walls. A book lies open on the table, its pages filled with diagrams, circles within circles, suns and moons, serpents and lions. The air is heavy with the smell of smoke and herbs. The alchemist leans close, watching the crucible bubble. His face is lit by fire. He believes that in this moment, he is on the edge of something vast, something the world has forbidden, yet something the soul demands. This scene has played out across centuries. In hidden chambers, in castle basements, in monasteries, in lonely huts. Always the same flame. Always the same search. And even now, though science has claimed its triumph, whispers of alchemy remain. In secret societies. In esoteric orders. In the fascination with the Voynich manuscript. In the modern dream of immortality, transhumanism, the philosopher's stone reborn as technology. The forbidden sciences never truly die. They change their names. They shift their forms. But their essence lingers, unsettled, whispering still. The history of forbidden books is also the history of fire. In the public squares of Europe, in the deserts of the Middle East, in the forests of the New World, knowledge has so often been condemned not with argument, but with flame. The book was seen not as paper and ink, but as a vessel of spirit, a dangerous contagion. To destroy it was to destroy its power. To silence the page was to silence the soul behind it. But fire does not only destroy. It also haunts. When we hear the crackle of burning wood, we might also hear the echo of pages curling, blackening, disintegrating into ash. And yet, if one listens long enough, it is almost as if the words continue to whisper from the smoke, refusing to vanish entirely. The Church called them heretical. The state called them seditious. To the mystics themselves, they were revelation. And so the long war between authority and vision played itself out across centuries. Mystics were always dangerous. They claimed direct experience of the divine, an encounter unmediated by priests, rituals, or dogma. They wrote in languages of fire and light, of inner journeys and secret unions with the eternal. Consider Meister Eckhart, the German theologian of the 14th century. He spoke of the birth of God in the soul, of a divine spark dwelling in every person. His sermons pushed the boundaries of orthodoxy. To say that God was within, to say that divinity was not confined to the Church, was unsettling. After his death, some of his works were condemned. Passages were banned, altered, burned. Yet his voice endures, faint but unextinguished, in the pages that survived. Or Marguerite Porete, a French mystic whose book The Mirror of Simple Souls spoke of union with God beyond the structures of church and sacrament. She wrote of an annihilation of the self so complete that the soul lived in perfect freedom. For this, she was declared a heretic. In Paris, in the year 1310, she was burned at the stake, her book burned with her. Yet somehow, a few copies of her manuscript escaped. Centuries later, it resurfaced. What was thought destroyed now speaks again. Or Giordano Bruno, who dreamed of an infinite cosmos filled with endless worlds. For the Church, infinity was blasphemy, only God was infinite. To claim the stars were suns, each perhaps with its own planets, its own life, was to undo the order of creation. Bruno was tried for heresy, and in 1600 he was burned in Rome's Campo de' Fiori. His books, too, were thrown into fire. But his vision, like a spark, leapt across centuries to inspire the astronomers who followed. The spectacle of burning knowledge was not isolated, it was systematic. In 1497, in Florence, the Dominican friar Savonarola declared a bonfire of the vanities. Paintings, mirrors, playing cards, cosmetics, and countless books were heaped into towering pyres. The air filled with the acrid smoke of ink and parchment. The fire was meant to purify the city, to rid it of temptation, to silence dangerous ideas. But what was burned was more than vanity, it was culture itself. In Spain, during the Inquisition, Jewish texts, Islamic manuscripts, and mystical writings were seized, condemned, and consigned to flames. Knowledge that had flowed through centuries of Arabic scholarship, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, was erased from libraries, leaving blank spaces where once there had been bridges of thought. And in the New World, conquistadors arrived with sword and cross, and with fire. In Mexico, the Spanish friar Diego de Landa ordered the burning of Mayan codices, books of bark paper filled with glyphs, recording centuries of astronomy, mythology, and history. He believed them works of the devil. Of the thousands of codices that once existed, only 4 are known to survive. Imagine the universe of knowledge that was turned to ash beneath the open sky. Why were these books feared? Because a book is a seed. A single idea, planted in the right mind, can spread beyond control. Fire was seen as control. But fire also reveals fear. For if an idea were truly powerless, why destroy it? If it were truly false, why silence it? Those who burned books revealed, in their flames, that they recognized their danger. They sensed that words can outlive institutions, that symbols can outlast kings, that whispers can erode empires. And yet, even as manuscripts burned, some survived. Carried in secret, copied in hidden rooms, smuggled across borders. Many works declared lost have resurfaced centuries later, emerging from monastic libraries or private collections. Sometimes the very act of banning a book ensured its preservation, for what is forbidden becomes desirable, what is burned becomes unforgettable. The story of forbidden books is therefore not only a story of destruction, but of resilience. Like seeds that survive a forest fire, they wait beneath the ash until the time is right to grow again. Imagine now the burning square. Night has fallen. The fire roars, sparks leap into the sky. The crowd watches. Some cheer, some remain silent, some weep. The pages twist and crumble. And yet, in the crackle of flame, there seems almost to be a voice. The voice of the book itself, resisting silence, whispering into the smoke. The mystics are gone, the heretics silenced, their bodies turned to ash. But their words, in some form, still travel. Through copies, through memory, through legend. Ideas do not burn as easily as paper. Perhaps this is the deeper lesson, that knowledge can be forbidden, but not erased. That even in the ashes of burning squares, something survives. The forbidden books of the mystics continue to call us, not with the voice of defiance, but with the voice of longing. A longing for something beyond the ordinary, beyond the permitted, beyond the narrow walls of orthodoxy. And so the fire becomes not only an ending, but a haunting. Every flame that consumed a book left behind a shadow. Every ash carried a trace of ink. And every silence left a space that still murmurs. The story of forbidden books does not end with flames. Fire destroys, but silence conceals. And after the age of burnings, a new age arose, an age where knowledge did not shout, but whispered. Where books were no longer piled in pyres, but hidden in vaults, disguised in allegories, written in codes. This is the world of secret orders. For centuries, knowledge that could not survive openly took shelter in societies that promised silence. Some were real, others perhaps imagined, and still others a curious mixture of both. They lived in the cracks of history, their names half-glimpsed in manuscripts, their symbols carved discreetly into architecture, their presence felt but never fully proven. The Rosicrucians, whose manifestos spread across Europe in the early 17th century, claimed descent from a mysterious brother named Christian Rosenkreutz, who had traveled through Arabia and learned hidden sciences. They promised a new dawn of wisdom, a reformation not only of religion but of all knowledge. Yet no one could find them. Were they myth? Were they code? Or did they walk unseen, concealed beneath ordinary lives? The Freemasons, born in guilds of stonecutters, evolved into something stranger, a network of symbols, rituals, and allegories, promising light to those initiated into their mysteries. Their lodges became libraries of forbidden texts, their rites encoded lessons too dangerous to speak openly. For some, they were harmless fraternities. For others, conspiracies whispering at the edges of history. The Hermetic orders, like the Golden Dawn of the 19th century, drew upon alchemical manuscripts, mystical commentaries, and the fragments of ancient Egypt to construct elaborate systems of initiation. To pass through their rituals was to walk symbolically through death and rebirth, through darkness and illumination. Their libraries were filled with texts that traced their lineage back to Hermes Trismegistus, to the Emerald Tablet, to the very origins of forbidden science. Because books could be seized, burned, or banned, these orders relied on a language more subtle than words. Symbols. A triangle inscribed in a circle. A serpent swallowing its own tail. A star with 5 points, or 6, or 7. To the uninitiated, they were marks without meaning. To those within, they were entire libraries compressed into a single form. The symbol became a book that could not be burned. It could be carved into stone, woven into fabric, painted into chapel ceilings, hidden in plain sight. The symbol was portable, indestructible, transmissible without suspicion. Even the cathedrals of Europe, built under the supervision of stone masons, have been read as silent books of symbols, geometry, proportion, alignment, numerology. Perhaps the walls themselves whisper. But secrecy has its price. To encode is also to obscure. To protect knowledge is also to bury it. Over centuries, many symbols grew opaque, their meanings lost even to their inheritors. Some rituals became hollow repetitions. Some allegories became puzzles no one could solve. Knowledge preserved too well becomes fossilized, unreadable. And so, as some forbidden books survived through silence, they also became unreadable ghosts, their meaning locked away not by fire, but by time. The existence of secret orders provoked both fascination and fear. For rulers, they were potential conspiracies. For the Church, they were heresies in disguise. For the public, they were shadows on the wall of history, endlessly interpreted, endlessly misunderstood. Did the Rosicrucians truly hold the secret of transmutation? Did the Freemasons preserve the lost wisdom of Solomon's Temple? Did the Hermetic orders possess books long since vanished from the libraries of the world? No one can say. But the allure lies not in certainty, but in secrecy. For secrecy itself is power. A book that can be read by anyone loses its danger. A book read only by a few, whispered from mouth to ear, symbol to symbol, retains its aura. And so, forbidden knowledge survived, not through public discourse, but through clandestine preservation. Not through libraries, but through rituals. Not through lectures, but through symbols. Imagine now a candlelit chamber. Hooded figures gather in silence. A book rests upon an altar. Its leather is worn, its pages inked with diagrams of stars and serpents. No one outside this chamber will ever see it. But within, its words are read, its diagrams contemplated, its silence kept alive. The book is not burned. It is not banned. It is hidden. And sometimes, to be hidden is more powerful than to be known. We are left with a haunting question: how much of history's forbidden knowledge survives not in libraries, but in codes, in symbols, in the rituals of secret orders? How many of these books are not lost at all, but preserved in plain sight, their language disguised so completely that we pass them every day without seeing them? Perhaps the greatest secret of forbidden knowledge is not that it was destroyed, but that it may still be here. Not all forbidden books spoke of angels, alchemy, or hidden symbols. Some were more dangerous still, they spoke of freedom. If the mystics threatened the soul of the church, if the alchemists threatened the boundaries of science, then the revolutionaries threatened the throne itself. Their books did not whisper of eternity, they shouted of justice, equality, rebellion. And rulers knew, a single book could ignite an empire. In the 17th and 18th centuries, Europe was shifting. Kings ruled by divine right. The church remained a pillar of authority. But beneath the surface, whispers grew louder. Printing presses had multiplied, and with them, the power of the written word. A forbidden idea could no longer be contained within a single manuscript. It could be copied, carried, distributed in secret. And so, a new kind of forbidden book appeared, the pamphlet. Small, cheap, easily hidden. Passed hand to hand, left on tavern tables, nailed to doors in the dead of night. Among these were the works of Voltaire, who skewered superstition and tyranny with wit so sharp it drew blood. His books were banned, burned, yet still they spread. His words became sparks that leapt from mind to mind, until no fire could contain them. And Jean-Jacques Rousseau, whose social contract declared that sovereignty belonged not to kings, but to the people. His book was banned in France, Geneva, and beyond. But the idea had been loosed. Once written, it could not be erased. It is no coincidence that revolutions followed the trail of banned books. In France, the Enlightenment philosophers laid the groundwork for the storming of the Bastille. In America, pamphlets like Thomas Paine's Common Sense turned hesitant colonists into revolutionaries. Paine's words were banned in Britain, but they spread like wildfire in the New World. Rulers feared the press because they saw clearly what it meant. Control of information was control of power. To ban a book was not merely to silence it, it was to declare war upon the future it promised. But banning was not simple. It required machinery. In Catholic Europe, the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the index of forbidden books, became a catalogue of danger. First published in 1559, it listed titles considered heretical, blasphemous, or dangerous to morals. The works of Galileo, Descartes, Pascal, and hundreds more appeared upon its pages. To read from the index was a sin. To possess such books could mean excommunication. Yet the index had an unintended effect, it became a guide to curiosity. For what more alluring than a list of books one is forbidden to read? Students, philosophers, even priests quietly sought them out. The index, meant to extinguish danger, became a map of hidden fire. In Protestant lands, censorship took different forms: royal licenses for printing, state censors approving every page. But the result was the same: power sought to bind the word. And always, the word slipped its chains. Wherever books were banned, underground libraries appeared. Hidden presses in basements. Secret reading societies. Books smuggled inside false covers, philosophy disguised as scripture, revolution disguised as prayer. In Poland, in Russia, in the Ottoman Empire, readers risked their lives to pass along forbidden texts. In some cities, whole networks of clandestine printers existed, their presses dismantled and reassembled at the first whisper of discovery. To hold a forbidden book was to carry both danger and hope. To read it was to taste freedom, even if only in silence. And still, rulers burned them. In Paris, London, Rome, pyres of books rose again. Enlightenment texts were thrown into flames as once mystical treatises had been. The fire was meant to end them. But fire cannot erase memory. Each burning only spread the idea further, as smoke that drifted across borders, as whispers that took new root. It is almost as if forbidden knowledge feeds upon opposition. The more tightly it is bound, the more fiercely it grows. So we see that forbidden books are not only about mysticism or science. They are about power. They are about who may speak and who must remain silent. The same fire that consumed alchemical manuscripts consumed revolutionary pamphlets. The same fear that silenced the mystics silenced the philosophers. And yet, time after time, the forbidden book outlives the hand that bans it. Kings fall. Empires crumble. But the words remain. Every forbidden book has two stories, the story of its words, and the story of the one who dared to write them. Behind every banned page is a pen held in trembling defiance, a mind burning with dangerous thought, a life poised on the edge of ruin. The survival of a forbidden book is always paid for in human blood, exile, or silence. Consider Giordano Bruno, the Dominican friar whose works dared to imagine an infinite cosmos, filled with countless suns and countless worlds. For Bruno, the universe had no edge, no boundary, God's creation was endless. But for the authorities, his vision was heresy. His books were banned, his thoughts interrogated, and at last, he was burned alive in Rome's Campo de' Fiori in 1600. His body turned to ash, but his books survived, smuggled and whispered across Europe. Or Socrates, centuries earlier, not executed for a book, but for words spoken. His ideas, preserved in Plato's dialogues, were seen as corrupting the youth of Athens. The city offered him silence or exile. He chose death, drinking poison rather than abandoning his pursuit of truth. His trial became a warning, and an inspiration, that the price of knowledge is sometimes life itself. Later came Salman Rushdie, whose novel The Satanic Verses was condemned with such fury that a death sentence was proclaimed upon him by decree. Though living in the modern age, with printing presses, laws, and free speech, he became a hunted man, a reminder that words remain dangerous still. His book, banned in multiple countries, became one of the most talked about works of the 20th century. For others, the penalty was not fire, but banishment. Writers cast from their homes carried their books across borders like contraband. Victor Hugo, exiled from France for his opposition to Napoleon III, smuggled his works to the mainland, where they circulated in secret. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, expelled from the Soviet Union for exposing the horrors of the gulags in the Gulag Archipelago, became a global voice of conscience, his books banned at home but revered abroad. Exile is its own form of burning. The writer remains alive, but torn from their roots, their words carried like ashes in the wind, never entirely belonging anywhere again. And then there are those we cannot name, because their silence erased them. Countless authors whose works never reached us, because fear kept them from writing, or because they destroyed their own words before the world could. A burned book we can mourn. A silenced book we will never even know to grieve. How many voices are missing from history, how many revelations never written, how many truths lost forever to the weight of fear. In this way, censorship is not only an attack on words, it is an attack on memory itself. It is not only the writers who bore the cost. Readers, too, risked their lives. In Nazi Germany, to own certain banned books was a crime punishable by prison or worse. In Soviet Russia, samizdat, the secret copying and distribution of forbidden texts, was an act of rebellion. Typists would spend long nights retyping entire manuscripts by hand, passing them on sheet by sheet. Each copy was fragile, but each one kept the flame alive. A book read in secret is more than a book. It is an act of resistance, a bond between writer and reader across walls of censorship and centuries of silence. In imperial China, the written word was both revered and feared. Books shaped dynasties, yet they could also unmake them. The most infamous episode came under the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, who in 213 BCE ordered the burning of books that did not serve his regime. Confucian classics, histories, philosophies, all were destroyed, and scholars themselves executed or buried alive. The aim was simple, to erase all memory of the past, so that the emperor's rule might stand as the only truth. Though fragments survived, the loss was immense, a silencing of centuries. Centuries later, under the Qing dynasty, books deemed subversive were again suppressed. The literary inquisition punished writers for perceived criticism, even in obscure poems or commentaries. To write a single phrase that could be read as critical of the emperor was enough to condemn one's family. Here, the price of knowledge was not only personal death, but the extinction of one's entire lineage. In modern China, censorship continues, though the method has shifted. Books are not burned in public squares, but filtered through algorithms, banned from shelves, and silenced in digital form. Writers like Liu Xiaobo, Nobel laureate and dissident, paid with imprisonment and eventual death in custody for his advocacy of democratic reform. His words survive, but his life was the price. In the Islamic world, too, the written word carried immense weight. The Quran itself was a book around which civilizations rose. But alongside reverence came fear of deviation. In medieval Baghdad, the great libraries of the Abbasid Caliphate gathered the wisdom of Greece, Persia, and India. Yet heretical writings, those that questioned orthodoxy, were banned. The works of Ibn al-Rawandi, a skeptic who challenged prophecy and miracles, were hunted down and destroyed. Only fragments survive, quoted by his enemies. He was erased almost completely, a ghost whose voice we can only hear in refutations. In more recent times, the Middle East has seen books ignite firestorms of controversy. Naguib Mahfouz, Egypt's Nobel Prize-winning novelist, faced assassination attempts after clerics declared his works blasphemous. His novel Children of Jebeloi was banned for decades, yet circulated underground, passed hand to hand, each reader risking condemnation. And of course, the fury surrounding Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses was not confined to the West. Across much of the Muslim world, the book was banned outright. Copies were burned in Pakistan, protests erupted in Iran, and possession of the book became dangerous. Here, the written word drew lines of fire across nations. In Africa, forbidden books often meant forbidden histories. Colonizers controlled not only land but also narratives. In South Africa, under apartheid, works by black authors that spoke of liberation were banned. Writers like Steve Biko and Nadine Gordimer found their books suppressed, their words dangerous because they gave voice to the oppressed. To publish, to read, even to possess such works became a crime of resistance. In Kenya, the plays and books of Ngugi wa Thiong'o challenged colonialism and post-colonial corruption alike. Arrested for his writing, he spent a year in prison without trial. Yet he continued to compose in secret, writing his novel Devil on the Cross on prison toilet paper. To write was itself rebellion. To smuggle those words out was to defy an empire of silence. Elsewhere, entire indigenous traditions were forbidden, oral epics, myths, and rituals erased or demonized by missionaries and colonial regimes. Not only books, but memory itself was deemed dangerous. In colonial India, the British wielded censorship as a weapon. Texts that spoke of independence, or that celebrated indigenous culture, were often banned. The writings of Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who used journalism to stir resistance, were censored and used as grounds for imprisonment. His newspaper was seen as more dangerous than any weapon. Even Mahatma Gandhi's Hind Swaraj, a book advocating nonviolent resistance and the rejection of modern imperial civilization, was banned upon publication in 1909. It circulated nevertheless, a thin booklet carried quietly by the very people it sought to awaken. Across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, the pattern is the same. Rulers fear words because words inspire thought, and thought cannot be chained. Books become crimes. Writers become enemies. Readers become conspirators. And yet, again and again, the forbidden book survives. Carried in secret, copied in fragments, written on scraps of paper, disguised in allegory. The human cost is vast: executions, exiles, assassinations, imprisonments. But the survival of even a few words, a few books, a few voices, shows that the forbidden cannot be destroyed entirely. It may be silenced, but it is never erased. The story of forbidden books is not a Western story. It is a human story. From China to Cairo, from Johannesburg to Delhi, rulers have burned, banned, and buried words. And yet, like seeds scattered in fire, those words germinate again and again. Every forbidden book carries the memory of its martyrs, the scholars buried alive, the novelists stabbed, the poets imprisoned, the thinkers erased. To read such a book is to honor not only its words, but its ghosts. When we think of censorship, we imagine fire. We imagine books hurled into flames, paper curling, ink turning to smoke. But in the modern age, censorship is no longer always visible. Fire has been replaced by silence, and silence is harder to see. And yet, as in centuries past, books continue to survive in the shadows. They are hidden not in monasteries or beneath cloaks, but in servers, in drives, in encrypted networks. The library has gone underground once more, but this time, its shelves are digital. Governments no longer need to build bonfires. To ban a book in the 21st century may mean simply removing it from catalogs, erasing it from online shops, filtering it from search engines. No smoke rises. No ash remains. A book can vanish so quietly that many will never know it existed. And yet, others notice. Others preserve. For with every act of erasure comes an equal act of resistance. Just as medieval monks copied manuscripts by candlelight, modern scribes mirror entire archives, replicating books into secret repositories scattered across the web. These are the shadow libraries, vast, hidden networks of forbidden texts. Some are academic, sprawling collections of research papers, textbooks, and monographs locked behind paywalls but freed by those who believe knowledge should belong to all. The names of these libraries circulate like whispers: LibGen, Sci-Hub. Their servers shift, vanish, reappear. To many, they are piracy. To others, they are liberation. Others are political, archives of banned literature, Samis. Reborn in digital form. In nations where books remain censored, readers turn to encrypted PDFs, shared through email chains, hidden forums, peer-to-peer exchanges. A book can now cross borders in seconds, its journey invisible. The forbidden text, once fragile, is now indestructible. To delete it in one place is meaningless. It has already been copied, mirrored, multiplied. Yet censorship itself has evolved. Where once kings and priests banned words, now corporations and algorithms act as silent censors. A book can be delisted by a single platform, its reach cut off at the root. An algorithm can bury it beneath layers of noise. A search engine can quietly erase it from memory. This is a censorship of absence, not violence. You may never know the book was missing. And perhaps that is the most dangerous form of all. But here lies the paradox: though the digital world multiplies books endlessly, it also makes them fragile. A lost password, a deleted server, a changed format, and entire archives can vanish. Unlike stone tablets or printed volumes, digital texts depend on constant renewal. Without vigilance, the shadow libraries themselves may dissolve into nothing. In this way, the battle between forbidden and preserved knowledge has not ended, it has only changed its terrain. What is striking is how familiar it all feels. The underground press of Soviet Russia echoes in the peer-to-peer file shares of today. The whispered circulation of banned pamphlets in Enlightenment Europe mirrors the quiet spread of PDFs in censored nations. The secret orders who encoded truths into symbols find their reflection in encrypted archives and coded torrents. The technologies change. The spirit does not. In China, censorship has taken on its most monumental form, the Great Firewall. This vast system of digital filters, surveillance, and deletions is designed not only to block websites but to reshape memory itself. Search for certain books, and you will find nothing. The silence is so complete it feels as though the words never existed. Books that question the state, such as those on the Tiananmen Square protests of 1989, are forbidden. Memoirs of dissidents vanish from bookstores. Even Nobel Prize-winning works, like the writings of Liu Xiaobo, circulate only in encrypted samizdat form, hidden in cloud folders, disguised in file-sharing platforms. And yet, readers resist. PDFs are smuggled in from abroad, downloaded with VPNs, passed in encrypted chat rooms, shared on hard drives and hushed exchanges. Just as scribes once copied books in monasteries, digital readers now preserve them in mirrors and backups, keeping alive what official history has erased. During the Arab Spring uprisings of the early 2010s, forbidden books and texts played a strange, subterranean role. Works banned for decades, books about democracy, revolution, or secularism, circulated once again, this time through smartphones and digital forums. In Egypt, political writings like those of Nawal el-Saadawi, who critiqued patriarchy and authoritarianism, were circulated in digital form long before her works could appear freely in bookstores. In Tunisia, pamphlets and banned histories reappeared online, feeding into the wave of protest. What had once been fragile, printed leaflets became indestructible files. The regimes could tear down posters, raid printers, and seize paper, but they could not stop the torrent of digital words. In modern Russia, censorship has returned with a new face. Books critical of the state or of its wars are quietly withdrawn from shelves, publishers pressured into silence. Works by Boris Nemtsov, the opposition politician assassinated in 2015, are difficult to find in print. Texts exposing corruption or dissent are increasingly erased from the public sphere. But Russians have a long memory of silence. The tradition of samizdat, illegal, hand-copied texts that circulated in the Soviet era, has been reborn in digital form. Encrypted messengers, clandestine websites, peer-to-peer exchanges all serve as the new underground press. Each act of sharing becomes a quiet defiance, a continuation of an old resistance. And yet, danger remains. A book once burned is gone, but its absence is obvious. A digital book erased may disappear without notice. Websites hosting vast archives of forbidden texts are often shut down overnight, their servers confiscated, their domains seized. For example, during political unrest in various nations, archives of banned journalism, memoirs, and novels have been purged from online repositories, leaving only broken links in their wake. For those who did not save copies, the works are lost, as surely as if they had been burned. The paradox of our age is clear: we can copy a book infinitely, and yet we can lose it completely, silently, without flame or smoke. Still, resistance thrives. A teenager in Beijing reading a banned memoir on a smuggled PDF. A student in Cairo passing along a scanned copy of a forbidden feminist text. A dissident in Moscow archiving entire libraries onto hidden drives. Readers are no longer just consumers of books, they are guardians, scribes, and curators, carrying the torch of forbidden knowledge into the future. The shadow library is built not by institutions, but by ordinary hands, each copy an act of defiance. In this digital age, the forbidden book is both harder to destroy and easier to erase. It is everywhere and nowhere, scattered across hard drives, encrypted into code, mirrored on servers in faraway lands. Perhaps we stand now in a fragile moment. The forbidden texts of today may become the silenced ghosts of tomorrow, or they may survive, multiplied beyond control, etched into the architecture of the Internet itself. The fate of the forbidden book has always rested in fragile hands: the monk, the smuggler, the printer, the dissident. Today, it rests in us, the anonymous readers who choose to copy, to save, to pass along what others would erase. For as long as a single copy survives, the forbidden book lives on. The forbidden book has always been a mirror of its age. In the Middle Ages, it was chained by faith. In the Enlightenment, it was feared by kings. In the 20th century, it was silenced by totalitarian regimes. In our present moment, it drifts through servers and encrypted clouds. But what of tomorrow? What forms will the forbidden book take in the centuries ahead? First, we must imagine a time when the printed book, bound in paper and ink, grows rare. Already, the marketplace tilts toward digital publishing. Many younger readers know books not as objects, but as files. And here lies the danger: a file is infinitely reproducible, but also infinitely deletable. What happens when libraries no longer carry shelves of paper but instead licenses to digital texts? A single contract can revoke access. A book can vanish from an entire population with the stroke of a key. No bonfire, no ashes. Just absence. In such a world, the forbidden book may not need to be banned at all. It may simply be made unavailable, its existence erased from catalogs and memory. And the silence would be nearly perfect. Imagine, too, a future where algorithms not only recommend books but also decide which may exist. Already, AI can detect subversive language, flagging it for removal. In years to come, entire manuscripts might be denied publication before they are even finished. A writer may never know which of their words crossed the invisible boundary. The censor will no longer be a priest or a king. It will be an invisible system, automated and unaccountable, erasing dissent before it is even born. And yet, what is forbidden will still find ways to survive. Perhaps it will hide within code, embedded in images, disguised in interactive media. Perhaps tomorrow's forbidden book will not look like a book at all. But there is hope in the same technologies that threaten. As censorship becomes more pervasive, so too does the possibility of resistance. Already, experiments in blockchain archiving hint at a future where texts cannot be deleted, where copies are scattered across countless nodes, beyond the reach of any single authority. Imagine forbidden books encoded permanently in distributed networks, each reader becoming a custodian, each device a hidden library. In such a future, erasure would be impossible. The forbidden book would become eternal, immune to the flames of both fire and silence. We must also ask, what will be forbidden in the future? The boundaries shift with each age. Perhaps it will be genetic texts, books that reveal secrets of DNA, suppressed by corporations that profit from scarcity. Perhaps machine-written books, too radical or too uncanny, will be deemed unsafe. Perhaps works that blur the line between human and artificial intelligence will be locked away, their authors erased not by fire, but by code. Or perhaps the forbidden book will not even be written. Perhaps the most dangerous knowledge will exist only as data sets, hidden away in servers, never allowed to reach the form of words. And yet, across all these possibilities, one truth remains: the forbidden book survives. From clay tablets buried in sand to scrolls hidden in caves, from parchment copied in candlelight to pamphlets smuggled under coats, from PDFs passed in secret to future blockchains humming across the globe, the forbidden text has always adapted. Its survival is proof not only of human curiosity, but of something deeper: the refusal of truth to be silenced. The forbidden book is more than paper, more than file. It is an idea. and ideas cannot burn. So when we imagine the future, we need not fear that forbidden books will vanish entirely. They may change shape, they may grow stranger, they may be disguised in symbols or encrypted in machines. But as long as there are readers, there will be guardians. As long as there are writers, there will be rebels. The forbidden book may never be safe, but it will always survive. There is a pattern that runs through all ages, so steady it almost feels inevitable. Every attempt to silence words, every fire, every index of prohibited titles, every digital erasure, all of it has failed in the end. The forbidden book always finds a way back. Consider the ancient libraries burned to ruin, their shelves reduced to cinders. From the Library of Alexandria to the libraries sacked by conquest in Baghdad and Nalanda, whole civilizations lost their storehouses of thought. Yet fragments survived, copied into other tongues, carried on trade routes, hidden in monasteries, remembered in song. The Greek philosophers, banned by early church councils, returned through Arabic translations centuries later. Lost texts of Aristotle, thought gone forever, resurfaced in Spain and Sicily, reintroducing the West to a forgotten wisdom. Words buried in one age became foundations in the next. Every forbidden book lives not only on the page but in the minds it touches. When a reader absorbs its words, they become a living archive. Even when the paper burns, the thought survives in recollection, retelling, adaptation. Think of the stories whispered by exiles, prisoners, and refugees. A poem memorized in a cell, repeated from one inmate to another. A parable carried orally across borders when its written form was banned. The forbidden book often returns not as ink but as breath. The forbidden book also returns by changing its shape. When one language is outlawed, another carries the burden. A dissident's memoir suppressed in its homeland may appear abroad in translation, only to find its way back in secret. So it was with Alexander Solzhenitsyn, whose works were smuggled out of the Soviet Union, translated into dozens of languages, then returned underground to the very land that silenced him. So it has been with countless exiled authors, whose words circled the globe before returning home, like migratory birds finding their way to familiar soil. Suppression does not end a book's journey. It reroutes it. Even in the digital age, where erasure can be silent, the cycle persists. A website is blocked, but mirrored elsewhere. A banned PDF is deleted, but appears in a torrent. A censored phrase is recoded into memes, jokes, symbols, until it slips past filters and spreads further than before. Every act of deletion becomes a kind of advertisement. The more dangerous the text is declared, the more readers hunger for it. What is forbidden acquires the aura of power. Thus, the forbidden book does not weaken in suppression, it grows in allure. There is a deeper reason the forbidden book returns. It speaks to something permanent in us. It is not merely the words themselves but the human longing they represent, for freedom, for truth, for forbidden knowledge. You may burn the page, silence the press, sever the server. But you cannot extinguish the desire that gave birth to the book. And so, again and again, words find their way back, as though they are not artifacts, but living entities, seeking new forms, new readers, new lifetimes. The forbidden book is not only a survivor of history. It is history's pulse itself. And so, we arrive at a strange realization. The very act of suppression guarantees the return of words. To ban is to preserve, to erase is to provoke resurrection. Each age has seen this cycle, and each age to come will see it again. The forbidden book is eternal. Not because the paper endures, nor the file, nor even the memory of a name. It is eternal because it expresses something indestructible, the human refusal to forget. Every time a forbidden book returns, it carries with it all the shadows of its loss, all the echoes of its silence. It reminds us not only of what was taken but of what endures. The eternal return of words is not only a pattern of history. It is a law of being. And now, dear listener, we come to the end. The long journey through centuries of shadows, where flames consumed pages, where laws forbade thought, where censors erased memory. We have walked through monasteries and libraries, through prisons and secret rooms, through the circuits of digital resistance and the whispers of the future. The forbidden book has always been with us. Sometimes visible, sometimes hidden. Sometimes as fragile as ash, sometimes as vast as the cloud. It has lived in scrolls, in manuscripts, in the printed press, in files and code. But above all, it has lived in us, in readers who remember, who pass along, who refuse to let silence win. As this story closes, let us imagine the hush after the words are spoken. A quiet as deep as the archives of time. The silence after the flames have burned down, when only smoke lingers in the air. The silence after a secret is whispered and carried away by the wind. The silence that waits after a final line is read and the book is closed. It is not an empty silence. It is a silence filled with echoes, the voices of those who wrote against power, who read in secret, who carried books across borders, who whispered poems in prison cells. A silence alive with memory. Perhaps this is the final lesson of the forbidden book, that silence itself is never final. For within silence, words wait. They gather, they hide, they rest. And then, one day, they return. The forbidden book has always survived. And as long as we dream, as long as we wonder, as long as we reach for knowledge, it always will. So let us close here, not with an ending, but with a pause. A quiet breath, as though the words themselves are withdrawing into shadow. Waiting, as they always have, to be found again. The silence after the words.